That's what we'll do because it says we're live, but I don't believe it just yet. So this was at the Las Vegas Shelby Museum, Bloom. That is a picture of my car. Well, it's not my car exactly, but it's the same year, same body style as my car. So yeah, we'll get this thing rolling. And we will start our show as per usual in this weird day. Are you okay?
Yeah, I just disappeared into the void, but I'm back.
You left.
I'm here. I had to pilot the ship across the ocean from the void back. All aboard.
I like this. Look at our funny hats.
Mm-hmm.
It is time for our Week 10 recap here on the Audible, the Footballguys.com podcast. It is Cecil, Lammey, and Sigmund Bloom going beyond the box score and let you know exactly what happened in all of Sunday's action from across the National Football League. Bears fans are so happy because they could beat the Lions 20-13, the final score. They could be the Matthew Stafford-less Lions. And, well, things change pretty quickly around here. That's what our boss, Joe Bryant, says. And Bloom, the Matthew Stafford thing, that was like, he's going to be fine, no worries. And then this morning it's like, no, he can't go. So we'll talk more about that, but we'll talk about Jeff Driscoll starting at quarterback. And, 269 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 INT for Driscoll. Also 37 yards rushing because this team can't run the ball. So he was their leading rusher. And Driscoll does what he does, right? He's athletic. He tries to push things down the field. He got Marvin Jones Jr., 5 for 77. And a Matthew Staffordless game, you're going to take that. You're going to take 3 for 57 and a touch from Kenny Golladay. You're going to take 3 for 47 from TJ Hawkinson. Danny Amendola getting 4 for 29 in this one. J.D. McKissick with 36 yards rushing and 6 catches for 19 yards receiving. Don't know exactly who would be starting J.D. McKissick or Bloom why.
Right.
But without Stafford, this is what you get.
Yeah, and this was kind of an elimination game anyway. Maybe for all intents and purposes, both these teams were out of it anyway. Without Stafford, he was the only thing keeping this team afloat and competitive. So their season's swirling down the drain. Chicago does get the win. Mitchell Trubisky gets some confidence, but we're going to end up back at this point, the point we've been at already multiple times this year with Trubisky. So on the Detroit side, Driscoll had a good first drive, the scripted plays, and then there was a flurry at the end. In between, not very much from this offense. One nice play Driscoll made late in the game to Golladay on an extended play. And we saw this last year with Cincinnati. He's not overwhelmed on an NFL field, not completely overwhelmed, but still only marginally able to support fantasy values. So you're right, Cease. If you played Marvin Jones, if you played Kenny Golladay, you're happy with what you got. But this is probably about a ceiling game. Not that Chicago was a great matchup. It's not going to get much better, though. Ty Johnson had a concussion. You did see J.D. McKissick involved in the passing game and the most effective runner. But Bo Scarborough, and we'll see if he can get a call up. Less Paul Perkins, please. At least they didn't go down quietly. That's all I can really say for this Lions team. And as we start to look ahead of the offseason for Detroit, are they going to fire Matt Patricia? Probably not. But where is this going? Where should it be? Matthew Stafford, we're not quite in the autumn of his career, but he's taken a lot of punishment. He still played really well leading into this injury. But where is this franchise? And I'm not even sure that the Bears are worse off than the Lions right now, despite all of the lumping on them we've been doing lately.
Yeah, lumping on Mitchell Trubisky, and he threw 3 touchdowns today. And, a lot of it was after a slow start, granted, but it was 16-23 for 173 yards, 3 touchdowns, no INTs for Trubisky. Allen Robinson gets 6 for 86. That seems to be, Bloom, what jump-started, using air quotes, the Bears offense, is they just started feeding Robinson. All of a sudden, it worked for Taylor Gabriel, 4 for 39 and a touch. Tariq the Freak Cohen, 4 for 23 receiving and a touch, 3 for 14 on the ground. Ben Braunecker gets the other touchdown, who nobody started. So, and Dave Montgomery, 17 for 60 on the ground. Have to include that one in there as well. So they get the win, but there's still some slow starts, and there's still some issues with Trubisky, and there were still some times when you saw passes that went awry, and you saw quite a few of them, but you saw Chicago players, almost their body language like, oh, God, yeah, I know, this isn't going to happen. And then it did.
the team kind of rallied around Trubisky. Trubisky did play better as the game went on. See, for the first half of this game, it still felt like a first down was a Herculean effort for this Bears offense. And then, as you said, you're just throwing it around Allen Robinson. I could do that. You could do that. It got some things going. Bronk and his touchdown actually really lit the fuse here. Like you said, you saw some speed from Cohen on his touchdown, some speed from Gabriel. And, that's how they were able to win this one, with the defense holding on at the end. As far as fantasy goes, though, David Montgomery did not score. So, you're still seeing his floor and his ceiling. He's kind of a girly, you need the touchdowns for him to have value. This will pull you back in. Well, maybe pull you back in with Allen Robinson, because they're going to play. By the way, Detroit gets Dallas. I think playoff controversy when I think of that matchup. They get the Rams next week. So if Jalen Ramsey's on, Allen Robinson against Mitchell Trubisky, do I like that? You're playing any Bears next week. But from a larger standpoint, Cease, is it good that Trubisky had this game? Is it good that this regime can think like, okay, well, he's developed. We can get him back on track. Don't we pretty much know the best of what he's going to be? Maybe not the worst. So if they continue to go down this Trubisky road, you think of it in terms of relationships, right? Where you feel like the relationship's failing. I'm always thinking about this. I just we had a streetcar wedding last night. Relationships always on the mind, right? Is it better that they have some hope in this relationship now? Would it be better to just get it over with?
It reminds me of what's going on with Mike Vrabel. Yeah. We're going to get to that game in a little bit. Like, see, it works, kind of, maybe. And the other team hands it to us. But anyway.
Right.
So there you have it. How long we want to talk about Lamar Jackson? We could do like this whole show. Just forget the other games. None of the games matter because Baltimore stole our hearts. And I hate Baltimore. I hate them. I hate the Ravens. And I love Lamar Jackson. I love him so much. It's fantastic to watch. 3 touchdowns, 223 yards, running for touchdowns, 65 yards rushing, of course. That's what he's spinning, burst. You had the backfield and the trio, and RG3, Mark Ingram, and Lamar Jackson were in the backfield at the same time. That was amazing. Mark Ingram getting a rushing touchdown. Cool. 9 for 34. Didn't need to do much against the Bengals. And that's the problem you get with these type of games, where it's like when it's so easy, sometimes they don't need to put the foot on the gas. They could have ran Ingram all day. Ingram could have had 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. But you got a touchdown. You got 34 yards. Deal with it. Hollywood, Marquise Brown, couple of Hollywoods today. 4 for 80 and a touch. Mandrew, 6 for 53 and 2 touchdowns. Nick Boyle getting 4 for 78. And really Lamar Jackson doing whatever he wants as the Ravens beat the Bengals 49-13.
Yeah, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but this looks like a team to contend with in the AFC. Not just, measuring up. And I know Cincinnati, number 1 pick maybe. But still, this is what you do against teams that are that bad. You just make it look easy, just like they did against Miami in week 1, revisiting that. And see, so you could see it. It was getting closer and closer that Lamar Jackson was going to break a long touchdown. The one he did, he weaved through about 4 guys. There was a spin move, a juke. Michael Vick, see, that's basically it. The only running quarterback we've seen as aggressive-minded as Lamar Jackson is Michael Vick. We all remember what Michael Vick did for fantasy. Lamar Jackson, probably a better passer than Vick. I mean, it's yet to be seen, but this is something for fantasy that we have not seen. And what that elevates with him, Marquise Brown getting a touchdown on this one, Mark Andrews getting 2 touchdowns, even Nick Boyle continuing to make plays if you just have to go for a what-the-heck tight end. Like you said, for Ingram, it was just that it was too easy. The game was too easy. They barely had the ball at all, and they had some defensive touchdowns. Cincinnati kind of tightened it up to 28-10 or so, and then the defense put it away. And that's why this team is really interesting, right? Because Marcus Peters has 2 pick sixes already. You have a deep secondary now. You have a team that can present some problems on both sides of the ball. I'm jealous. And by the way, Robert Griffin III got a carry. They think they had 3 Heisman winners in the same backfield. And he also got that mop-up work in the 4th quarter. Next week, Houston. That's a great yardstick game for both of those teams. I would not want to be facing Baltimore. I kind of wish I was a Baltimore fan right now so I could root for Lamar Jackson, but I got him on a lot of fantasy teams, so that's why we play fantasy football.
And the Steelers have Mason Rudolph. Yeah,
They had him rated as a first rounder.
That
Yeah.
counts.
Yeah.
What counts is the development of Lamar Jackson. One thing that everybody needs to give more credit to is he didn't come into the league like this, right? And Bloom, this is something I hate.
Okay.
I hate when someone says revolutionize the game, because football is a very simple game. It doesn't change. There's sprinkles, there's wrinkles, and that's it. But football, the idea of it, the way you attack it doesn't really change. When someone revolutionizes the game, and we've heard it about a ton of quarterbacks, when someone does it, we don't have to talk about it. We just see it.
Yeah, right.
What we're seeing with Lamar Jackson, you mentioned his development as a passer. That's really what I want to talk about, because I don't want to talk about Ryan Finley. But his development as a passer, he wasn't this good of a passer when he came into the league. He wasn't this good with his weight transfer when he threw. I mean, we want to nitpick. We want to talk about little things. Yeah, let's talk about Lamar Jackson doing the little things. Is he a fantastic athlete? Yes. Wow. And the legs and the speed and blah, blah, blah. But what I love watching Bloom is his development as a passer, even when he's from the pocket, not just all the stuff he does on the run.
Yeah, I think what we really have going on here with Jackson is Cece's been facing these questions all along, about his ability to be an NFL quarterback. And in some ways, maybe he should send a fruit basket, flower bouquet to the doubters, because you can just see how hyper focused he is. And as a passer, especially in the middle of the field, he's just, you think about the middle of the field and it's like the magnetism that he exerts on the defense because of his threat as a runner, and what that opens up for Andrews and Brown. And imagine if Boykin develops, or even what Boyle is doing. So this is really fun, and it's commitment, Cease. Really, it's commitment. And maybe this is something Matt Waldman talked about this, like John Harbaugh as a special teams coach background. He isn't invested in a system. He isn't invested in a scheme. He wasn't hired because of something he did that someone expects him to do. He delegates. Maybe he and Ozzie Newsome are like copacetic like this, delegate, trust, just like Belichick, trust the guys that you hire. And with Greg Roman, you bring him in as a consultant last year. This year, you let him totally design an offense around Lamar Jackson. We heard all offseason. This is where preseason and offseason hype is important, because we heard all offseason. They were excited about the way this was going to leverage Lamar Jackson and his development as a passer, but yet he was still going to remain very aggressive as a runner. And it's fantastic to watch him. He's seeing him against Deshaun Watson. That's like must-see TV. See,
Right.
Of any era of football, you talk about football doesn't change. I think there was something that went on like a film like 1935 sprint draw with all this motion around, like all of this stuff. Like you said, Cease, it almost looked like it was faked because it looked like a modern play from 1935.
Very good. Very good. Let's talk about the Bengals if we have to quickly. Ryan Finley, by the way, Bloom, I don't know if you caught on the pick six when Finley audibled.
Yeah.
And so he says Omaha, and that's an alert to a defender, like, okay, here comes a change.
Yeah.
He said Omaha, Ringo out. I think it was Ringo. It was something with an R.
Yeah.
So immediately, as soon as he says that, I'm watching him going, the right side receiver is going to run an out route. And he said it loud enough for the cameras. Of course, you're on the field, you heard. And so what happens? Right receiver runs an out route. It gets jumped. It gets taken to the house by the Ravens and their defense. So Ryan Finley in there, big arm. It's got some legs, right? We saw that a little bit. Whatever. Joe Mixon, 30 for 114. So, okay, and rookie quarterback, let's lean on the ground game in a blowout. Tyler Boyd, 6 for 62. That's enough, right? With a rookie quarterback, it's fine. On Tate, only 3 for 36. Tyler Eifert, beautiful touchdown catch, 2 for 20 and a touchdown there. Mixon also got a couple grabs for 37 yards. So, nice effort by the rookie, just well short of their competition.
Just keeping the theme here with that Detroit offense, Finley keeps it. There's a pulse there, at least. So if you played Tyler Boyd, it wasn't a letdown. If you played Joe Mixon, not only was it not a letdown, but you think about it, it seems like, really? In a game you lose 49-10, that's when Joe Mixon gets 30 carries? Really? I don't understand that. Poor Joe Mixon. And he's running his heart out. Joe Mixon actually looked really good in this game. But I do some sort of football PFREF search. Like, has there been a game when a team has lost by 39 points and their starting running back has 30 carries? So poor Joe Mixon, all that punishment. Really, again, you're just looking at this like, are they going to get the number one pick or not? Who's going to be the number one pick? Is it Joe Burrow? And they face Oakland next week. So Oakland charges the playoffs. It's on.
Yeah, here we go. And because of the Chiefs stumbling and bumbling down the field, we're going to get to that game eventually. But Browns 19, Bills 16. And what is it? As soon as we're going to start talking about Cleveland, Devin Notch shows up in the chat room. Devin, what's up, dude? And of course, watch the Power Grid every single week right here on our YouTube channel. But the Browns get the win, and Baker and company feel all right for now. We'll get to them in a little bit. But let's talk about Josh Allen just being off today. Like some days as a passer or as a player, as a performer, you're just off. And Josh Allen, you saw that on several throws where it was just behind his mark. You know, it might even go down as a drop, but it just wasn't really a well-placed pass from Josh Allen. Not that he's a guy that puts in these perfect dimes every single where, but you just saw that his game was a little off, a little overthrown, a little behind, a little off target. And because of that, the numbers suffered and they didn't win. Because in key situations, how many times they go for it on fourth down in this one, Bloom? In key situations, at least two, then you're just off target. John Brown, 5 for 77. Cole Beasley, 4 for 74 in this one. Dawson Knox, 4 for 55. Robert Foster's first catch of the year, I think, 1 for 20. Nobody started him. Devin Singletary started him, and then he got 42 yards, and then Josh Allen gets the 2 rushing touchdowns. So that's the way it goes with the Bills and their running quarterback. I guess he's going to steal those touchdowns, and he's going to have some off days as a passer, which was today.
Yeah, for fantasy, Josh Allen's become a high floor option. Another strong game, really closer to a ceiling game in this one because he finished both of those. And Devin Singletary is the big letdown here, although he still looks pretty good, but he wasn't fed to the extent he was last week. And it was a game script that could have easily allowed him to be fed in this one. But as you say, Josh Allen missing on these fourth downs, the offense stalling out too often. And the game was really quiet offensively until a trade of touchdown drives. Josh Allen did put together a touchdown drive in the fourth quarter to take the lead, but Baker Mayfield answered it. Robert Foster was involved. As you said, reasonable floor game from John Brown. But even on the one of the last misses of the game, Cole Beasley was wide open, and Josh Allen is just not seeing it. And as much as I've been a defender of Josh Allen, the thing that you're seeing him repeatedly not do is being able to keep the whole, even though his arm and his mobility keeps the whole field in play, in theory, it's his field vision and awareness that is lacking, along with the accuracy. And what you really saw in this game, Cecil, is Buffalo and Cleveland are in like roughly the same echelon, which means even though Buffalo has a playoff record right now, even though their schedule's good, they get Miami next week. Where are they headed? And all these other teams we'll talk about, like Tennessee, Oakland, we talked about. Some of these teams that have playoff aspirations can see that it's a 3-team race in the AFC, New England, Baltimore, and Kansas City. And Oakland wants to, of course, make their bid to say we belong in that conversation. Houston wants to say we belong in that conversation too. But that 6th spot, year after year, we say this, the 6th spot AFC could go to just about anybody, even the Steelers.
Nah, don't let's not get crazy. As Devin says, the Browns' red zone offense still an issue because it was. Get them near the goal line, and then it's just like, we don't know what to do. It's like Keystone Cops out there. But Baker Mayfield, 238, 2 touchdowns, no INTs, 26 of 38 passing. Jarvis Landry, 9 for 97 and a touch. Certainly the memo was put in probably by Odell Beckham Jr. Is there a suggestion box in Cleveland's building where it's like Odell's stuffing the box, like, hey, throw it to Odell, because that was their mindset. 5 for 57, we're all 12 Bloom. By the way, Kareem Hunt was on the field for the first time this year. 7 receptions, 44 yards, and then 4 for 30 on the ground. Nick Chubb doing his thing as a runner, 20 for 116, no rushing touchdown, a couple catches, 5 yards. Wanted to see more. Hollywood Higgins, again, there's more than one Hollywood in the NFL, but the first one, Hollywood Higgins, the first one for now, 1 for 7 and his 1 receiving touchdown when nobody started him. But so the Browns get the win. Okay, you clean some things up. You hopefully make Odell Beckham Jr. happy-ish, kind of, because you target him in the end zone. And then whenever he goes up for a one-handed catch and he doesn't get it, you're actually shocked. Most guys do that. And you're like, 2 hands, use 2 hands. OBJ does it, and it's like, oh wow, he didn't catch it. Oh well.
So as you alluded to, Cleveland could have won this game a little more comfortably, maybe, if they didn't have an aptitude. 8 plays. See, I don't know if we have ever seen this before. Again, I want to do a PFF search. I'm not sure I could match this, figure it out. 8 plays at the 1 or 2 yard line, consecutive, because there were 2 different pass interferences in the sequence that reset the downs to first and goal at the 1, and they didn't score. There was 3 Beckham targets and 5 Chubb runs, and some of it just offensive line. And we've talked about the Browns' offensive line. Maybe some difference in play calling creativity, because it was Landry all day. I mean, it was Landry on the first drive, and then Landry made an incredible adjustment on the game-winning drive. They also gave up a safety to Buffalo in this one. But what you saw from a fantasy point of view, the big reveal here, Cease, is that both Hunt and Chubb can be fantasy relevant. Is Hunt going to be a big threat to Chubb? No. I mean, maybe Chubb will get a few less targets, but that was already starting to diminish from where it was earlier in the year. But Chubb is still getting to get his stamp on a game as long as his team is competitive. Speaking of being competitive, the Thursday night game, Pittsburgh going to Cleveland. So, Cleveland can probably entertain being competitive, and Chubb getting a big workload against a pretty stiff Steelers run defense, where this Bills run defense, they're playing Miami next week. So it's like, go out and get Kalen Ballage. But the Bills run defense is wilting. And Beckham, you're getting the targets. You're not getting the ceiling games. You're not getting the big plays against the Steelers. Oh, man. I don't think that's just all the alcohol I had last night, Cease. I'm queasy when I think about Odell Beckham going against Steelers corners. But, that we have that to look forward to. And for Cleveland, hey, what's up, Jared? Jared was down here. You got to show Joe Bryant the tattoo at our wedding party.
That's legit, man.
Yeah, when the mayor of Footballguys meets the person who loves Footballguys so much, he has him tattooed on his leg, Black Eyed Joe. So, and that's how the Browns won, right? That was the magic that we conjured up. So same as last year, right? Get some positive momentum going, spoil some team seasons. Again, we'll see if they can do that coming back at home on Thursday night against the hated Steelers.
Chiefs and Titans, 35-32. Titans win with Pat Mahomes back. Okay, we're going to get to how it got here, but let's talk about the Chiefs side first. 3 touchdowns, 446 yards passing for Pat Mahomes. Damian Williams, 19 for 77. Hang on to the rock. Tyreek Hill in this one gets a little bit banged up, but still has 11 for 157 and a touch. Travis Kelce, 7 for 75 and a touch there as well. McCole Hardman, only 1 catch, but it was 63 yards for a touchdown because of that big play speed and ability. Sammy Watkins, 5 for 39 and some, I'm not catching that type of targets from Sammy, or it's like, I could probably catch that, but I'm going to get blown up. I'm not going to catch that. You see that from Sammy Watkins. It's kind of what we know, but what we thought would happen is Mahomes would return, they'd score 30-some points and they'd win. That wasn't the case today, Bloom.
Yeah, we got most of that right. And this is one of the games of the year so far. I can't wait to absorb this one, not in the context of a Sunday, and just watch the ebbs and flows here. Because there was a point in this game that Tennessee's defense was just hanging on for dear life, and the offense wasn't doing them any favors. This game, and it was a real Kansas City local crowd, even though it was in Nashville. Like listening to the crowd, it was like a Steelers traveling crowd, But it went back and forth, different twists and turns. And Tennessee sees every single year. Tennessee, they don't look like a good team consistently from week to week, but you look at the standings and there they are, still in the playoff hunt and finding a way to win games like this. And the difference going from Tannehill to Mariota, we'll talk about that in a second, it's night and day in some important ways, even though Tannehill is not what we call a good quarterback or a quarterback that should be a franchise quarterback. Patrick Mahomes certainly is. And he actually, on his first throw, looked like an interception, got overturned, and then they just go right down the field, shovel pass to Kelce. You saw a jump pass that
was the one to Hardman.
It was, Cecil reminded me of the Jordan shot on Craig Elo, where you can just hang and see your vector, and the way he spun it. He plays in a truly unique way. We've never seen anybody, even Brett Favre and some of the things he did, which he was like, I bring up Brett Favre because that's that last unique quarterback where you can say he's making his own mold. There's not somebody that you would compare him to. And then Hardman's speed, Hardman's a what the heck flex every week when he can show that kind of speed, especially on those throws. I think Mahomes makes these plays in such an unexpected way that it takes the defense a beat. It's almost like you can make yourself a spectator for a second watching some of these plays, and you snap back in and realize that with this speed, because Tyreek Hill, there was an injury scare for a moment, but he's still teleporting around the field. Damian Williams had a fumble. By the way, LaShawn McCoy inactive for this one. They said it was to rest him. That's weird when there's a week 12 bye. Damian Williams wasn't overwhelmingly good. He did have a fumble that was costly in this game, but he got his PPR points. Watkins, as you said, I mean, even with Mahomes back, this is just where he's going to be in the pecking order. That first game was just a false positive for him. Demarcus Robinson made a few plays. They're just hanging around. If Sammy Watkins gets hurt, Robinson could be good. But you look at this team, Cease, and I mean, there's no doubt in any one game scenario, you give Patrick Mahomes a chance. I don't care who they're playing, anybody in the league. But at the same time, their defense can't get off the field. They had a special teams mishap. I mean, if they didn't have the special teams mishap, they probably win this game. They have a chance to kick a field goal, and they botch the snap, and then I think get an intentional grounding call. But then it's still on the defense. That's not a good place to be if you're Kansas City. So they go to face the Chargers next week. Chargers are another one of those teams. Cease, what are we going to get? Well, in a divisional game, Kansas City at least needs to look alive, because if you lose that one with Oakland's schedule and the easy games they have coming up, this thing could get away from Kansas City really quickly, even though if they just get to the playoffs, that they can run the table.
Yeah, and we know that Raiders fans, like our pot stoner degenerate fan up in Greeley, wants to see. Jason, we love you. Derrick Henry was a beast. Yes, he was. And let's get to that side of things, because this defense can put up some spirited efforts once in a while, but it's still a huge, massive problem for this team. And Tennessee was able to take advantage, because here comes Derrick Henry. And I love our man, Frank Schwab from Yahoo Sports, when he said on Twitter, like, hey, Derrick Henry had a big run. So how are the Titans going to reward him? By using Deion Lewis more. Well, they didn't do that quite today, but they fed him 23, 188, 2 rushing touchdowns for the big man. Ryan Tannehill, 2 passing touchdowns, 181 yards passing. Khalif Raymond, I remember him. I was going to text him because we thought that was a touchdown, but he was touchdown. It could have been a 72-yard touchdown. Said it was just a 152-yard reception, but all right, Khalif. Nobody even rosters him, but hey, it's worth mentioning. Anthony Ferksker, nobody rosters him. He had a touchdown. Adam Humphries, you might have had in, maybe, thinking there's going to need to be points here. 1 for 23 and 1 touchdown to seal the win. Jonnu Smith, 4 for 30. It's enough. Yeah. If it's it's fine. Whatever. Nobody else did anything. Tajay Sharp had a catch early. It was a very nice catch, by the way. AJ Brown had 1 catch on 4 targets. Just nothing here from the passing game, but it was lots of Derrick Henry and some nice special teams play.
Yeah, they made the plays when they needed to, right? And including, early on, Kansas City scored, and then there was a Chris Jones sack strip that will set Kansas City up again, and they held them to a field goal. The game doesn't get away from them early. Then the defense gets them a touchdown on that Damian Williams fumble. Then, like you say, you have the long run by Henry. You have the long pass to Raymond, which still set up a touchdown. They made plays when they needed to. It's the classic win where maybe you lose 70 or 80% of the plays, but the 20 or 30% you win are the decisive plays in the game. And Ryan Tannehill. And Cease, I think what you see when you watch Tannehill is the team can rally around him, right? There were 2 different plays that he needed not just to sacrifice his body, but summon up will to win a collision like a running back. He had to load up as a runner, and he was a wide receiver at Texas A&M, all Big 12 honorable mention wide receiver. But it wasn't his speed or athleticism. It was power and will that made these plays happen, including a big 2-point conversion that allowed the margin of victory because, or at least it would have been the difference versus a tie or a loss at the end. For fantasy, it was okay, and I think for fantasy, we still see Kansas City. Rivers, will he bounce back next week? For a little bit, the defense was causing Kansas City's defense was showing up like they did last week against Minnesota, but they, Dalvin Cook. So here's your measuring stick, right? I mean, Cease, if a defense played Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry in consecutive weeks in September, maybe Dalvin Cook would be the one running all over that defense,
right? But
in November, you don't want to see Derrick Henry running at you. And you can see it, Cease, like you get empathy, right? I mean, you see when like 2 or 3 guys have to bring down Derrick Henry, and they're like the Lilliputians and Gulliver. Like, I mean, he dishes out punishment. He dishes it out, man. And you can see, and this is why you can't count Tennessee out. I mean, I don't think they're going to win the Super Bowl, but you can't count them out as a playoff team because actually this coaching staff is going to be simple-minded enough of saying, we're going to keep running Derrick Henry until you show you can stop him. And a lot of these defenses this time of year, and the Chargers, I don't think they're going to be able to do that. The anemic passing game, A.J. Brown was a big letdown. Corey Davis was out. You thought it was going to be a big game from him. Johnny Smith, we can see, still has a limited ceiling. Yeah, you have some guys making a play here or there like Humphreys or Ferkser, but that's not fantasy relevance. But the more interesting story here, although as you cast it, Cease, maybe it's that Tennessee stays in purgatory, but they're very much alive going into their bye. And they have 4 divisional games left, including 2 against Houston. And they have Oakland and New Orleans. I don't know about New Orleans right now. So, none of those games, I mean, we could have said going into today, New Orleans is a tough one, but who knows? I mean, this team, because they're simple-minded enough to just run Derrick Henry at defenses until they get worn out, it's going to be really interesting to watch and could be in a lot more games like this because their defense isn't going to win games for them, but it's going to keep them in games. And their offense with Ryan Tannehill playing inspired football on the plays that matter, it makes them a fun team to watch.
This game means you're going to get Mike Vrabel for another year and Ryan Tannehill for another year.
Yeah.
So there you go, Titans fans. Can we blame you, Bloom? Can we blame your streetcar named Desire?
Ha. It's in Washington County,
Saints,
actually.
For the Saints losing today?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we took them. That's a whole other thing.
Now, what's Washington County? Because you're saying
in Washington County, where I grew up, there's a trolley museum just north of Washington, PA, where a lot of my family's from. And the actual streetcar named Desire is there. You can ride it. So it's a little Pittsburgh. If you're outside of Pittsburgh, in the coal mining country, the hills and the hollers, look for that. Okay.
Well, look for Sigmund to be wearing his captain hat, riding around town. A good day to you, sir.
Yeah.
And the Saints, did y'all party too hard? Is that why the Saints look like trash today? Absolute garbage.
Sean Payton proposed to his longtime girlfriend down in the quarter at a private party at Longway Tavern on Friday night. So, yeah, it was in the air.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Love was in the air, but not good football in New Orleans as they lose to Atlanta 26-9. Matt Ryan was back and even making plays. You want to talk about Tannehill running and like taking some shots? Ryan was out there, bad ankle and all, getting some first downs and scrambling around, taking some hits. Okay. 182 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 INT for Matt Ryan. Brian Hill. We're going to be talking about him on the waiver wire show because Devontae Freeman has a foot injury. Wyoming Cowboys, baby. 20 carries, 61 yards. Don't worry about that. He got a catch for a touchdown as well. So that was awesome to see. We'll see what more he can do. Austin Hooper, 4 for 17, and the other receiving touchdown. Russell Gage, 4 for 23. Calvin Ridley, 3 for 28. Julio Jones, 3 for 79. And how many times, Bloom, have we seen Julio Jones like thrown to the ground like Lattimore did on a play that was ended up being incomplete because Julio couldn't hang on to it because Marshall Lattimore like trounced him into the ground. Don't see that too often, but we saw the Falcons come into New Orleans with Matt Ryan returning, even battling through Devontae Freeman injury, everything, and getting the win.
You see, so I guess what you take away from this is playing for your coach. I mean, that's the only way you get an effort like this from the Falcons, knowing their season's over. And also the hatred, whatever, the intensity that goes through these divisional games. And perhaps we see this usually around, again, week 4, week 5, when everybody agrees that it's a mismatch. And maybe that even is absorbed. Saints, both teams coming off a bye. But, Saints might be looking ahead. And you can't come into the ring with your gloves down. And that's what New Orleans did today. And Atlanta played like it was their Super Bowl. And they won their Super Bowl. And, maybe they can keep that going. They're not going to save Dan Quinn's job. Who knows what this team is going to look like going forward. But what we did see is a resurgence of a running game. And even though Brian Hill's yards per carry weren't great, a lot of that was against defense that was stiffening up to stop the run because they knew that the Falcons were playing out the string at the end just to get timeouts and time off the clock. You did see him get a touchdown as a receiver here. Foot injury, running backs. I mean, we may not see Freeman again this year. I don't think they're going to lose much going from Freeman to Hill as a runner. Maybe some, Freeman's an excellent receiver. Hooper gets a touchdown here. But again, what you see is what's good for Atlanta is bad for fantasy. Jones, Ridley, okay games, but not games that are going to put your team over the top. Matt Ryan's game, although it was a tough matchup, so you were kind of expecting it. But I think you find a recipe here where more balance, especially because of the offensive line issues, help save some punishment for Matt Ryan. And they get to play spoiler. They get to play spoiler against Carolina next week, another divisional matchup, and keep some of this momentum going while the Saints, on the other hand, are looking for answers.
Bloom, every year there's that running back that comes from not necessarily out of nowhere, but there's some backup fourth string back every year that ends up winning you your fantasy title. I would love it if it's Brian Hill. Not saying that it is, but look at the timing on the calendar, right? We're going to be doing week 11 waiver wire show on Tuesday. Yeah, right. We're going to be talking about Brian Hill, who also doesn't have to come off the field because he's a good receiver. Maybe not quite Freeman receiver, but okay, yeah. Thank you, universe, for letting us talk about the Wyoming Cowboys. Saints, man. Whew. Drew Brees, no touchdowns, no picks, 287 through the air, 152 to Michael Thomas, 152. Jared Cook, 6 for 74 in this one. Alvin Kamara was back, 8 for 50 as a receiver, and then 4 for 24 as a runner. Latavius Murray then gets 12 yards rushing and a couple catches for 7 yards. Taysom Hill run around doing his thing, throwing passes, catching passes. Yeah, fine. Ted Ginn targeted 3 times, no catches. But what was the problem here, Bloom? You're going at halftime, It's 13-6. Plenty of time. For me, and I was watching Red Zone, full disclosure. But for me, it was okay, you should have come out and hammered him with Latavius. You want to ease in Kamara, I get it. But why in the hell is Latavius Murray, and let Michael Thomas do his thing, whatever, but why are you giving him 5 carries? Give him 25 carries in this type of game and pound him into the ground, and then you can ease Kamara and have him catch 6-7 passes. Fine. But they just abandoned the ground game. And, well, here we are.
Yeah, do you really lose that much now if we're watching Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Brees? From those two, when Alvin Kamara was out, is what you bring up. I think you bring up excellent points. By going heavy with Murray, the offense was in its best mode, and they went out of that mode in this game. And just the crispness and the intensity wasn't always there on either side of the ball. Marshawn Lattimore got hurt in this game, by the way, a thigh injury. And this is an offensive line that has been very good at protecting the quarterback. And you saw Grady Jarrett and Adrian Claiborne and Vic Beasley come alive all of a sudden.
They were rushing 3 and still getting there.
Yeah, there were plays when 1 or 2 Saints linemen were looking around for someone to block while Drew Brees was getting sacked. That's the kind of day that it was. Kamara was lackluster. I mean, you're just not seeing Kamara put his stamp on a game the way he has in the past with his contact balance, which is burst. Those 1 or 2 or 3 plays in a game will get free in the open field, electrify the crowd. It's not happening. And like you said, Cecil, they didn't let Latavius Murray get a chance to do that in this one. Jared Cook did all right for fantasy, and Kamara in a PPR league was still okay. They also had a ton of hands to the face penalties, 4 on defense, just ill-timed penalties. Atlanta kept converting, and New Orleans kept not converting. And the one guy who was converting, although a lot of it was late, or at least a decent chunk of it, Michael Thomas. And Michael Thomas well on pace now after this one to break Marvin Harrison's single-season record. I mean, do you write this one off as an aberration? I remember, the Saints, this is a team that can peak early. There's 2 years in a row now where it feels like mid-season there's a point where the Saints would wish the Super Bowl was played next week. But not now. And they have to play Tampa next week. And that's not, again, it's the same script. They're going to Tampa. The same script, a team wanting to play spoiler, a team knows them very well. And if that one's competitive, then you start asking yourself questions about New Orleans. Are they a team that we put in that upper echelon? Or are they starting to lose some steam?
They got time to figure it out, though.
Yeah.
That's the thing. If you are a team, let's say the Pittsburgh Steelers, who were rolling until week 17 when they faced John Kitna and the Cincinnati Bengals, and Kitna had 500 yards passing against him, and Belichick saw that and said, Aha. I can use that. And then he did. The Steelers didn't win. So anyway. All right. No hope. Giants and Jets battle of the back page. 34-27. The Jets get the win. Sam Darnold, hot. But Daniel Jones, hotter. 308 yards, 4 touchdowns from Steely Dan. Darius Slayton, 10 for 121 and 2 touchdowns. Whew, that rookie-on-rookie action was very nice. Very good for the New York Giants. Golden Tate, 4 for 95 and 2 touchdowns there. Red Ellison, 3 for 42. No Evan Ingram in this one. Sterling Shepard shouldn't play football again this year. Saquon Barkley, 13 carries, 1 yard. 5 for 30 as receiver. Just wasn't there on the ground. For part of this time, Bloom, Sam Darnold was the leading rusher for either team. Didn't end up that way because Le'Veon barely beat him. But let's talk about this Giants side. And okay, Darius, you got something. Golden, of course. But oh my God, Saquon. Oof. I was taking one on the chin today.
Yeah, and said he was frustrated after the game. Not a great football game in the sense that neither of these teams are heading anywhere, but it was a good one for fantasy. We talk about this in the preview sometimes when two teams, losing teams, get together. Sometimes it can just be bad football and offense is getting bogged down because of execution problems. And sometimes it can be good for fantasy, even though it's not good football because of all the defensive breakdowns. And even though the Jets had their defensive breakdowns in this one, they also had Jamal Adams coming and taking the ball away from Daniel Jones and for a touchdown and otherwise putting his stamp on the game. But meanwhile, you also had Daniel Jones dealing to Darius Slayton. Darius Slayton was massive in this one. And Darius Slayton, I'll say a DJ Chark cease in that vein. It didn't take him until second year like it has for Chark, though. But you knew he had speed. You knew his speed was going to translate to the NFL. But what about the skill part of the position? You're seeing that. You're seeing Darius Slayton grow up. So Sterling who, right? I mean, I'm not saying Sterling Shepard hopefully can be in the long-term plans of this team again, but they don't need to rush him back. Golden Tate, everything he's done, he's earning his money. I mean, he's making them look good, at least in terms of contributing to not necessarily wins, but providing value. But then in the end, in the fourth quarter, this offense just got bogged down. And they couldn't get over the hump, at least in part because of Saquon Barkley. I mean, he looks mortal. He had a shoulder issue. I mean, I don't think he's going to be that electrifying Saquon Barkley that we've seen in the past. Maybe the bye will do him well, and he'll come out rejuvenated. Red Ellison in for Evan Ingram. And that's another thing to think about in the background, by the way, Evan Ingram and this foot-toe thing. And at some point, does he get shut down? Because what does it mean when you lose to the team that just lost to Miami? It's not great. This is a team that wants to build some momentum. Daniel Jones building some momentum as a passer, but the defense building no momentum at all except for the opponent.
Jets side of things, and Sam Darnold, 19-30, 230 yards, 1 touchdown, no INTs. Touchdown to Jamison Crowder, 5 for 81 and a touch. Demarius had 6 for 84 in this contest. Le'Veon Bell, 18 for 34 and 1 rushing touchdown. Darnold had a rushing touchdown as well, I need to note. Le'Veon Bell also gets 4 catches for 34 yards. Robbie Anderson got nothing, 1 for 11. That's something, but still almost nothing. Vincent Smith almost got a big one if Darnold has just hit him, and led him correctly. So, you take the good, you take the bad, and let's talk about the Jets. Yay.
Yeah, I know. It is like a sitcom, right? Again, second week in a row, the opening drive was great. Crisp, wonderful. Sam Darnold with a decent fantasy game. And again, if you went with either one of these quarterbacks as a streamer, as bye week coverage, as a second quarterback, as a DFS option, they did okay. Mainly just Jamison Crowder, and Crowder does seem to be the safest option here. Demaryius Thomas up and down, Robbie Anderson just down. And again, it's Washington next week. On paper, the big play should be there for Anderson. He did draw pass interference, but the numbers aren't there. There was actually another one on a flea flicker for Vincent Smith that could have been a touchdown that he missed. At least Bell is getting the receptions and the touchdown. Keep playing your running backs against the Giants after the bye. Everybody really against the Giants. If this Jets offense can do this, you go into Washington next week, maybe a winning streak gets going. Cease. You can lose to Miami and not have the first pick. Maybe not even have one of the first 3 or 4 picks if you're beating teams like the Giants and Washington.
Yeah, let's do it. Or not. Cardinals and Buccaneers. The Battle of BA. I love that. 30-27. The Buccaneers get the win. Let's talk about Kyler Murray, though, out there slinging it. Threw a pick for the first time, Bloom. He set a rookie record for the most passing attempts with no interceptions, and then he throws a pick today. Well, he was under pressure quite a bit, a couple sacks in this one. Christian Kirk, monster game. I mean, the answer is Christian Kirk, 6 for 138, 3 touchdowns. Andy Isabella, and more involved, 3 for 78. Last week it was 1 for 83, but still 3 for 78 this week. Larry Fitzgerald got 8 targets, 8 catches, 71 yards. So that's good. Nobody else did much of anything of note, including David Johnson looked like he was in slow motion. Like I'm like, I like David Johnson. And then watching him come back and in 5 carries for 2 yards, it was like he was like waiting and he was overly patient, almost like he was jogging or should I say yogging with a soft J.
Right.
Like, I don't know what the hell was going on. Kenyon Drake didn't do anything. Like, it was odd. Kyler out there, swinging his sword and all that kind of stuff. That's cool, but there's still issues here.
There are. And I mean, we know this team is under construction. And this game lived up to fantasy football hopes. And you say Battle of BA season, I think of the A team. BA Baracus, right?
Yes.
This was not an A team game. This was not a great football game in the sense of a well played game. Although you did see Christian Kirk just getting open deep. And again, it's Tampa. This is where New Orleans and Drew Brees has to get better next week against Tampa and take advantage, because you are also seeing a defense under Todd Bowles that is exerting themselves physically. The hits, Levante David, Devin White with their intensity in the middle of the field, really physically kind of intimidating at times this Cardinals offense, including David Johnson. So, for fantasy, Kyler Murray was good as expected in this matchup at San Francisco next week. I don't know about that. You had Larry Fitzgerald come back from the dead, but yet again, I'm going to go with him against San Francisco. We'll pick our spots here. Andy Isabella showing his speed again, by the way. Maybe not fantasy relevant yet, but you like that. And whatever they say about not making a bigger part of the offense, come on. They even had a flea flicker out of a reverse on a fake punt, Cease, and it worked. Have we ever heard those things all in the same sentence in our football lifetime? Flea flicker, reverse, fake punt, success. But it wasn't enough to get the win here. Tampa does enough at the end. And David Johnson just looks like, it's sad. See, I always remember in Jackie Brown's, he used to be beautiful. I mean, we're watching the decline of David Johnson before our eyes. Is this like a Todd Gurley thing from last year? Or Ron Gronkowski? I forget who it was who said that on Twitter, that he looks kind of like Rob Gronkowski did last year. You didn't see an effort to use him more as a receiver on downfield routes, which was working really well earlier this year. You did see Kenyon Drake look a better running back and more viable in the passing game. So when Chase Edmonds is healthy, at least this year, in the context of this year as a time, David Johnson's going to get paid a lot next year. What are they going to do with him? So, it's a crisis, and we're seeing a running back, even though he's 27, about to turn 28. So it's not like he's old, and he got spared basically a year punishment because of that wrist injury. It doesn't matter. It's catching up with him just as this team is starting to move into the future and getting some passing game options going. So, it was fun to watch. But again, not necessarily fun for Arizona fans when they look at the wins and losses at the end of the year.
Jameis Winston might throw the ugliest passes in the league.
And he chucks it. He's a chucker.
He does. He's like, I don't care about technique. I don't care about spinning it. It's going to get there. It's just going to look like it's, I don't know, like a hunk of meat. Like he's throwing steaks or pot roast.
A shot put.
Something. I don't know. It's ugly. Mike Evans, 4 for 82 in this one. By the way, Jameis had 358 yards of ugly passing. 1 touchdown, 2 INTs, of course, with INTs. Chris Godwin, 6 for 74. Hey, Ronald Jones is their starter. Awesome. Rushing touchdown, 11 for 29. Cool. 8 for 77 as a receiver. Plenty of goodness there. Then Peyton Barber gets a touchdown, 11 for 43 and a touchdown to further your frustration. But you got enough. Don't get greedy. OJ Howard starts your tight ends against Arizona, even if it's OJ Howard, and he got 4 for 47 and a touchdown upon his return today. So the players, Bloom, in this game were the players that we expected, and they came through and did enough to get the win.
Winston played pretty well, although there was an early exchange in this game. I think it was Blake Murphy, who does great Cardinals work, who really pointed this out. Jameis Winston has a bad interception and the Cardinals have to settle for a field goal. Again, seeing the limitations of these teams. But in the end, the Tampa offense was pretty solid. Now, Ronald Jones started out as the lead running back. Peyton Barber got the touchdown to finish the game, but all of a sudden, Ronald Jones can catch the ball consistently. He was a key part of the pass offense. Where did this come from? So why we were fading Ronald Jones, at least in terms of ceiling, was his lack of passing game involvement. And now you see it here. I think he did have a fumble on one of his receptions, but still, it was a new page, a new chapter in his career. We also saw in the Arizona matchup, yes, even O.J. Howard. We're going to play him against New Orleans next week. I don't know. But even O.J. Howard will come through. So next week, was it Ross Dwelly? I don't know who it's going to be. If it's going to be George Kittle or not. I hope it's George Kittle. Maybe it won't be George Kittle. But that matchup is still golden. And the team did enough to get over the hump. And, they lost a game to Tennessee, kind of like the game Tennessee won today over Kansas City. So you can see change this, change that. We could say that for Denver, too. We could say that for a lot of these teams. This team still has a lot of fight with Bruce Arians. And so for New Orleans, again, it's a trap going in to Tampa next week. And Tampa still looks like a team that, even though they're not going to the playoffs, has a lot to play for in terms of pride.
Now, just for a listener's note, Bloom, we're recording these during the afternoon games.
Yeah.
So we got to quickly wrap up so we can go back and watch the Steelers lose. But let's discuss what we've seen during these games so far. Currently, as we record, it's about halftime, 20-10, might be 21-10. Did they kick the extra point yet? I'm just looking at my live scoring here on ESPN. Miami 10-0 over Indy, and the Steelers and Rams tied up at 7 apiece in this one. But just any sort of general thoughts on all these three games going on right now?
Yeah, well, the Rams 7 was a snap over the head of Mason Rudolph that Dante Fowler just picked up and ran in. Otherwise, the Steelers defense is doing their side of the equation. And Mason Rudolph's functional, which is pretty good. The offensive line doing their job, keeping him protected and feeling safe to throw the ball against a pass rush for the Rams. Just got Clay Matthews back. You're not seeing either one of these offenses very robust. But the Steelers have, so another way we can think about this sometimes is maybe not who the good teams or bad teams are, but the good or bad units, defenses and offenses. Steelers defense is one of the best units in the league right now. They're a unit. Indy's not a unit. And Brian Hoyer, and we don't have Miami to kick around anymore. So after last week, we were saying, is Miami now not a good team or even a decent team, but not a team that's going to get run over like the way that Cincinnati did? And for that matter, we've been asking questions about Indianapolis. I mean, going from Brissett to Hoyer shouldn't be this significant, especially at home. But so Miami is not going to be an easy out. Fitzpatrick has them, the lovable losers, playing hard. Indy could be one of those teams nosediving out of the playoff picture if they can't get things turned around soon. They play Jacksonville next week, so that's kind of a mini elimination game there. And then just the Packers, opportunistic, Aaron Jones back in the scoring column. With you in your Carolina, and you need Kyle Allen to bring you back. This isn't going to be a Christian McCaffrey game, even though the Green Bay run defense has had trouble getting themselves off the field because of the script in this one. So you're seeing some clarification there with Green Bay because, we're going to watch Seattle and San Francisco. Again, we know San Francisco's good. We thought New Orleans was good. The rest of the NFC is difficult to gauge right now, but I think it's going to be an exciting second half. And, it's exciting to look forward to what we have down the stretch. And Cecil, I hope this is your bye week. You recouped, you rested, and you're ready for whatever that comes to bring for us for Denver. And certainly I'm excited, and I hope you're excited to have a Steelers second half that we have some emotional investment in.
Yeah, we'll see. It's tied. I'm surprised. Actually, I thought we'd record the show and then be like, yeah, this one's over. But it's not. It's never over. Bloom, by the way, as we wrap up today's show, I just want to ask, how happy are you?
Oh,
because I've known you for a long, long time, my friend, and we're not going to talk about any unhappiness, but I will say this, and I was talking to my son yesterday, who is going to Fort Benning in January for his basic, and it's Veterans Day tomorrow. I'm wearing this hat for a reason. I'm wearing my Grunt Style shirt because I wear a bunch of Grunt Style shirts, veteran-owned company. Check them out in Texas. And we thank our veterans, and the men and women who are in our armed forces are truly the people to look up to. You think the heroes are on the football field. They're not. They're the men and women in our armed forces who do what the rest of us, aren't doing, and we certainly appreciate all the freedoms that we have. Bloom, we're a couple of goofballs to get to sit around and talk about football because of our men and women, our armed forces that protect us and help us and strengthen us as a country, and certainly shake a hand of a veteran, all those sorts of things. And Liam did that when he was a kid. We'd be at a restaurant, Bloom, and he'd see someone in their World War II hat or Vietnam veteran hat, and he'd just go up. I wouldn't even tell him. He'd just go up and shake their hand. So let's do that. Let's have a celebrated Veterans Day. But Bloom, I was talking to Liam yesterday, and his best friend was trying to get back with his ex. And I was like, oh, and he had to have that talk with him. And I said, at the end of the day, here's what I want for all of my friends. I just want her to be happy. And seeing your pictures, seeing your face, being around you, interacting with Kate, the love of your life, like, I just know you're happy. And that's so important because our audience makes us happy. And there's times, I mean, not to get too deep or personal, but there's times when it's, everyone has their issues and their troubles, and both of us, Bloom, right? Where we get to do this show and it's like, we get to spend time with our football guys family, and it's awesome. We get to spend time with each other, and it's awesome. But I will say this, just to kind of toss it to you, Bloom. It's awesome seeing you happy. You all deserve it so very much, and it's fantastic to witness.
Yeah, thank you. We had our streetcar wedding party. We officially got married legally back in July. I mean, I guess all I really have to say is first, thank you. It's all the love, always love on our show here. But I guess I'm 44. My life changed in the year I turned 40, and all of my life I felt a pull more than anything towards a picture I had in my mind of what it felt like to truly love and be loved. And for a long time, I felt like it was kind of hopeless. I could go down. This is really me putting myself on the couch. Right. But as long as your heart, your soul can still wish for something, then it can still come true. You just have to be looking, right? Daniel Johnston, true love will find you in the end. But that song says, true love might be looking for you. You have to have your head up and looking around. And whatever that is for folks, like your story is still being written. And something I quote, there were a lot of drinks consumed in the French Quarter. There was a lot of wandering. There was times that people in our group were lost and then found magically. It's the French Quarter. Come down, please, Football Guys family. I want to represent New Orleans for everybody. But I think that one of the things I said a lot in my ramblings, one of these times I'll have to do like a 2 a.m. show. He's from the French Quarter, right? From the piano bar at Pat O'Brien's. That Bukowski, who allegedly carved his name into the cement over at the R Bar, one of the places we stopped last night over in the Maroney. And if you feel like you're losing your soul, then at least you still have a soul left to lose. So if you feel like something's slipping away, if you feel like something, the light is starting to get dimmer, you still have a light, and focus and go into the center of that light. And as long as you're doing things out of love or some sort of passion or positivity or enthusiasm, then sometimes the path will just open. You find that little golden thread and you follow it. As long as you find it, as long as you're looking for it, you can find it. It can find you. And I just appreciate you giving me a chance to talk about it, Cecil.
Fantastic, beautiful, wonderful, and as always, awesome. Follow us on Twitter and interact with us during the week. We'll be back on Tuesday morning with the Waiver Wire Show. He's Sigmund. I'm Cecil. We're the Audible. Stay tuned and stay frosty.